She sat across from Stephen Colbert, cameras rolling, millions watching, and said the word she had avoided for years: there was not enough honesty left to sustain real trust. For nearly 3 decades, Melinda Gates had been one half of the most recognized marriage in American business, a partnership that built the largest private foundation on earth and touched the lives of millions of people who never knew her name. Then, in 2021, that partnership ended, and the public was left with only fragments of an explanation. 4 years later, at 61, she finally filled in the blanks, and what she revealed reshaped how the world understood a marriage that had once looked unshakable. To understand why her words carried so much weight, it helps to go back to where she started. Melinda Ann French was born in August 1964 in Dallas, Texas, the second of 4 children in a household built on discipline and quiet ambition. Her father worked as an aerospace engineer during the Apollo era, and her mother ran the household with a steady hand. When her father started a small rental property business to help pay for his children's college educations, young Melinda was put to work alongside her siblings, painting walls, managing bookkeeping, and learning early that responsibility was something you earned through effort, not something handed to you. By her early teens, she was using an Apple II computer to track the family's rental records, teaching herself programming languages at a time when almost no girls her age were touching a keyboard for anything beyond typing class. That early exposure to technology followed her through Ursuline Academy in Dallas, one of the first schools in Texas to introduce computers into its classrooms, and later to Duke University, where she earned a degree in computer science and economics before completing an MBA at just 23. She interned twice at IBM, absorbing lessons about large-scale teamwork and software development, and when the company offered her a position after graduation, it seemed like the safe, obvious choice. But her hiring manager suggested something unexpected: consider Microsoft instead, a smaller, riskier company with outsized ambitions. She listened. In August 1987, she turned down IBM and joined Microsoft as a 23-year-old product manager, a decision she would later describe as the one that changed the entire direction of her life. Her rise inside Microsoft was neither loud nor accidental. She worked on early multimedia products like Cinemania and later led the team behind Encarta, the digital encyclopedia that would eventually sell more than 1 million copies and become a fixture in homes and classrooms throughout the 1990s. She also weathered failures, most notably Microsoft Bob, an ambitious but poorly timed attempt to make computers friendlier through a virtual house interface. By the early 1990s, she was managing teams of more than 100 people, and by 1994, she had become general manager of information products, overseeing more than 1,000 employees and helping shape products used by families around the world. In 1996, she played a senior role in the creation of Expedia, an idea that began inside Microsoft's Redmond campus and would later grow into one of the largest travel companies on the planet. It was during these same years that her personal life quietly intertwined with her professional one. She and Bill Gates began dating in 1987, keeping the relationship private because of workplace norms, and married in January 1994 on the Hawaiian island of Lanai in a small ceremony with only about 20 guests. She insisted on a prenuptial agreement that reflected her sense of herself as an equal partner, not simply the wife of a famous executive. Colleagues who worked alongside her during this period often noted that her promotions were earned in rooms where nobody cared about her last name, only whether the product shipped on time. By 1996, at 32, she made a decision that surprised many who assumed she was destined for an even bigger corporate role. She chose to leave Microsoft to raise her children, closing a 9-year chapter and opening a door towards something she had not yet fully defined. That door led to philanthropy, though not in a single dramatic leap. In 1994, she and Bill had already established the William H. Gates Foundation, a modest effort focused on health and education. In August 1999, several smaller family initiatives merged into what became the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, launched with an endowment of roughly $17 billion, funded largely by Microsoft stock. A trip to Africa in the late 1990s changed the trajectory of her giving permanently. Walking through clinics in Zambia and Tanzania, she witnessed mothers losing children to preventable diseases like malaria, and she returned home convinced that global health had to sit at the center of the Foundation's mission. Over the following 2 decades, that conviction translated into staggering results. The Foundation helped fund vaccination campaigns that contributed to a more than 90% drop in polio cases in Pakistan between 1994 and 2015, and it backed more than $1 billion in contraception and maternal health programs across Africa and Asia, work that researchers credit with preventing tens of millions of unintended pregnancies and saving well over 100,000 lives. For her efforts, President Barack Obama awarded her and Bill the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016, and France later honored her with the Legion of Honor. By any external measure, she had become one of the most influential women in modern philanthropy. But behind the awards and the public partnership, cracks were forming that would take years to surface. In September 2013, Melinda accompanied Bill to a townhouse in New York belonging to Jeffrey Epstein. On the very same day, the couple received a public service award nearby. She later described the visit as something that made her physically sick, calling Epstein evil personified and saying she regretted ever walking through his door. When she discovered that Bill continued meeting with Epstein afterward, she made her objections unmistakably clear, though the relationship did not end immediately, and that unresolved tension lingered over the marriage for years. Other pressures compounded the strain. In 2017, allegations of sexual harassment against Bill's longtime financial manager, Michael Larson, surfaced, and while Bill initially sought a quiet resolution, Melinda pushed for an independent investigation, a shift that friends say marked a turning point in how she approached conflict within her own household. Then in 2019, Microsoft's board opened an inquiry into a past relationship Bill had pursued with a company engineer years earlier, a revelation that surfaced during the height of the Me Too movement and further chipped away at the image of a disciplined, careful partnership. That same year, Melinda published Moment of Lift, a book that read publicly as a confident call for women's empowerment, but which she later admitted was written while she privately battled panic attacks and nightmares, quietly confronting how much of herself she had set aside over the years. The breaking point, by her own account, came during a trip to New Mexico later in 2019, when the accumulated weight of years of doubt and betrayal finally became unbearable. Friends close to her described what felt like a waking nightmare, a kind of emotional collapse that made clear the marriage could not continue as it was. She quietly began consulting divorce attorneys that October, and she and Bill separated privately while advisors worked behind the scenes for more than a year before anything became public. When the announcement finally came in May 2021, it stunned the world. After 27 years of marriage and 3 children, one of the most recognizable couples in American life declared their relationship irretrievably broken. The financial settlement that followed, believed to be worth around $76 billion, became one of the largest and most closely watched divorces in modern history. What followed was not silence but a slow, deliberate unburdening. Melinda pledged $1 billion over 2 years toward women's health and empowerment initiatives, and through her firm Pivotal Ventures, founded in 2015, she began directing hundreds of millions of dollars into organizations focused on caregiving, economic security, and women in technology and media. In May 2024, she formally stepped down from the Gates Foundation altogether, leaving Bill as sole chair after more than 2 decades of shared leadership, a decision she said would let her align her time and resources more directly with her own mission. It was not until her 2025 memoir, The Next Day, and a widely watched interview on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, that she spoke with full candor about what had actually driven her away. She described a marriage where honesty had eroded to the point that genuine intimacy became impossible, and she explained how years of therapy helped her respond to repeated betrayals without losing her own sense of integrity. She confirmed publicly for the first time that Bill's continued association with Epstein, even after warnings from her, functioned as a kind of final signal that their values and judgment had permanently diverged. What makes her story resonate is not simply the scale of the wealth or the fame of the man beside her for 27 years. It is the picture of a woman who spent decades quietly building competence in rooms that rarely welcomed her, who helped save millions of lives through careful, disciplined philanthropy, and who ultimately chose her own honesty over the comfort of a familiar public role. At 61, Melinda Gates did not simply confirm a rumor or settle a score. She offered a rare, unguarded look at what it costs to stand beside power for nearly 3 decades, and what it takes to finally walk away and begin defining a life entirely on your own terms.